Good evening, boys and girls. Today we will be investigating decimals on number lines so we can relate them to fractions, and I'll have it when I can correctly identify equivalent fractions and decimals when given a number line. So before we get into tonight's video, I just want to quickly review our fraction decimals equivalents. We know 1/2 equals 0 and 50 hundredths or 5 tenths. 1/4, just like a quarter is 25 cents, it is 25 hundredths. Just like a dime is 10 cents, it is 1/10 is 1/10 or 10 hundredths. And 1/5, we can turn that into 2 tenths using equivalent fractions, and that gives us 0.20. So this might be something helpful to write down as we go through today's video. Hopefully that brief review helped you. So we also are going to take a moment to review fractions on number lines. So if you remember from when we did fractions, I have 3 different number lines here, so this is going to be 0 on each of them, and then 1 on each of them. And now for my fractions, I count up how many I have. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and then 4. 4 over 4 would be 1 whole, so my whole number for each one, or my denominator, excuse me, for each one is going to be fourths. Now I'll do the same thing for each of these other ones. So now I have all of my fractions represented, but we've been working on relating them to decimals. So I'm just going to put the equivalent decimals above each one. So I know 1/4 is equivalent to 1/4, which is worth 25 cents. 2/4 is equivalent to 1/2, so I could even just put 1/2 there. And then I know that's worth 50 cents or 50 hundredths. 3/4 is equivalent to 75 cents or 75 hundredths. Now I'll jump down to my 1/10. Now my 1/10 is worth 1/10 because 1/10 is pronounced the exact same way whether it's fractions or decimals. Then I have 2 tenths, I have 3 tenths, and so on and so forth. I'll just go ahead and finish that out. So I finished out my tenths, and now my fifths. I remember my fifths are very similar to my tenths, except for instead of counting by 1/10, I'm counting 2 tenths at a time. So this would be 2 tenths, 4 tenths, 6 tenths, and 8 tenths. And so you see 4/5 and 8 tenths are equivalent here. 6 tenths and 3/5 are fifths, and 4 tenths are equivalent, and 1/5 and 2 tenths are equivalent. So this was just a review of fraction number lines, and then reinforcing what we know about decimals, just instead of representing them with model or just with the fractions now on a number line. So on our first example, we've got a number line here, and I want to know what is my fraction and what is my decimal. So the first thing I need to do is figure out my fractions. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 over 5 is going to be equivalent to 1 whole. So my denominator for all of these is going to be fifths. So my fraction is 3/5. Now 3/5, I want to put that in decimal. If I can't remember that counting by fifths is the same thing as counting by 2 tenths, I can very quickly take this and transfer it into tenths. And tenths are pretty straightforward to put into decimals. So I go to 2 over 2, and that's going to give me 6 tenths, which is represented by 0.6. I might even go ahead and label all of my decimals on my number line just to make that a little bit easier on myself as well. Alright, so let's move forward. This is the problem where I'd like you to pause and solve it, and we'll be back together in a moment. Alright, so I have 0 and 1, then I have 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, 4 whole pieces. So that's 4 over 4, meaning all of these are going to be denominator of 4. And I am also going to put that 2/4 I know is equivalent to 1/2, so I'm going to put that. This time, because I know my quarters are equivalent to 25 hundredths, I'll go ahead and put those on top. I'll do that ahead of time. And so now all I have to do is figure out my stars at 2/4, but my best answer would be 1/2 because it's simplified. So while this is a good answer, this is my best answer. Then my decimal is 0.5. I can have the 0, but I don't need it, so I can get rid of that. So that's going to bring us to our bring back to school problem here. I would like you to copy down this number line. There are 9 small lines in between the 0 and the 1, so I'll make that a little bit easier on you as you're copying that down. There are 9 small lines, so I would like you to tell me what fraction is at the star and what decimal is at the star as well. Take your time, and I will see you in the morning.